Hey, I'm Kelly Coleffel with Fivetran. This is Chris with Dropbox. Really happy to have you here. Dropbox has an incredible story about moving very, very fast with Fivetran and Databricks to business outcomes. So we're going to hear Chris's story. Real quick, we want to do some intros. So I look after partner sales engineering for Fivetran. Been here, Chris and I were talking, been here for 3 years. And my story is pretty simple, why I'm here. I was data consulting for the 6 years before that, and I recommended Fivetran probably 125 times to clients over that 6-year period. So this just became very easy for me. Chris, you want to do a quick intro?
Yeah, I'm Chris. I'm an engineering manager on the data platform at Dropbox. And so what that means is essentially the suite of tools Dropboxers use to solve their data problems. Been there about 3 years. Our data lake, 80 to 90 petabytes, lots of different tools and different things there. And so, yeah, that's me.
I know you said you love the company too.
Oh my gosh.
That's so important.
Yeah, I was at Amazon and Apple before Dropbox, and the Dropbox culture is being like engineering led, like from the core, and then people are just genuinely kind, which is the thing that I appreciate the most. So that's what I love.
So I've known Dropbox a long time. I don't think I was an original user, but I was looking with my wife over the weekend. I've got some really old files in Dropbox. You guys have been around for a long time. A lot of people know Dropbox. We're going to get the story of Dropbox in a minute. Who knows Fivetran? Who's heard of Fivetran? All right, not bad, not bad. Okay, so we're not brand new, but if you're not in this sort of data space where we operate fully automated data pipelines and data movement, been around since 2012. I consider us late stage venture backed. We have over 6,000, getting up close to 7,000 customers now, all over the world. Tremendous Databricks customers, been a Databricks partner for a long time. In fact, I have to mention Databricks, Data Integration Partner of the Year. Thank you, Databricks, for that. Very, very nice. Would love for you to come see us. That's just a little bit about Fivetran. Again, automated data movement, 700 sources into the Databricks Data Intelligence Platform. And customers all over the place, all industries, all geos, all verticals. Chris, a little bit about Dropbox?
Yeah, Dropbox, one of the premier brands in technology from way back in the day. I think a lot of people will be surprised at the scale. So 700 million people use it, millions and millions of paying customers, obviously a load of files outside of just our data lake. For us, we are a company that has and competes on the scale of some of the bigger brands you might see, but with a smaller engineering team, right? And like a nice combination of a small company, but with like global scale that you might find at a Google or a Facebook or something like that. So.
And I know we have success up there. There's been a lot of success together with Databricks, but I'd like to have you talk a little bit about some of the challenges that you've faced, and these have been happening over the last few years. You've addressed some of those. I'm sure you've got more to come, but what kind of drove you from a challenge standpoint to say, hey, here's where Fivetran could maybe help us?
Yeah, I mean, all I think you got to do is walk around this center and see all the different tools that are getting introduced every day. So, every single day or every quarter we get requests to add new data sets into our data lake, a new tool that we need to integrate with. And keeping up with that pace of new tools is just cumbersome for a team that's constrained but also operating at scale, like Dropbox. And so we had to introduce something to keep up with our business.
So when I was working with a lot of clients on the consulting side, I heard 4 things repeated over and over. And one of the things on this really stands out to me. Kelly, I've got to operate fast, because if I don't operate fast, I become irrelevant in my organization. I need simplicity. I need, operational reliability and sustainability. This note on here, I think about weeks in terms of, anybody else think of weeks in terms of sprints? I think it's my consulting, but I see 4 sprints right there, down to 30 minutes. That's incredible.
Yeah, I think the big thing for us is the last thing we want to be is a blocker for our business to make decisions. And things are operating so quickly, the tools that they're adding and the data sets they want to bring in, the last thing that we need to be is getting in their way when they're trying to make a decision. And so what we've been able to do by introducing Fivetran is really refocus a lot of our engineering efforts on building the value, per se, from the data marts that we want to create. We were able to create a driver data mart that, our leaders within the company are able to make decisions. And instead of focusing on the 700 plus integrations that Fivetran automates, right? And so that's the key thing that we were able to do.
I got to mention too, not that this should be a Fivetran commercial, but we also have a connector SDK. So if you have source 701, you can build that very, very easily with Fivetran. So I'm going to skip ahead to this next slide, and I'd love for you to discuss a little bit just anything that you can bring out, Chris, different groups, different areas, different use cases, different outcomes, because to me, it's all about what happens downstream. You got to have high quality, trusted, usable data flowing into Databricks Data Intelligence Platform so that I can deliver all those data-driven marketing outcomes.
Our data engineering team really moved to like a self-serve edition model with Fivetran. So if I'm a business person and I want to add a data source into the data lake, they were able to self-serve and do that. And then our data engineering folks could then focus on the boxes that you see after, right? And you see some of the things that they were able to focus on going and doing, but really we pivoted it to where our business folks could get data into the data lake without having to file a ticket, have an engineer go look at the data source, and a lot of those sort of things. That created knock-on problems in terms of governing the data once it gets into the data lake and things like that. But we were able to stop being the bottleneck for ingesting things into Databricks. So,
I like the fact too, another thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably didn't have to do with Fivetran and Databricks, no infrastructure. Like you're not dealing with infrastructure anymore, and infrastructure, when you are dealing with it, can really slow you down.
Right, yep, and Fivetran makes it easy to see what's failing, what's not, health checks and those sort of things. So from that standpoint, we really don't have to think about it. We're coming back to that problem, because as more folks add ungoverned assets into the data lake, you sort of need to be able to monitor what's going on. But in terms of accelerating velocity to decisions, Fivetran was very helpful for that problem.
How has it been when I look at some of these data-driven marketing outcomes and use cases you guys have, working with the downstream business owners? If I'm a downstream business owner and I'm not getting to what I want with the data, I feel a lot of pressure. And how has that experience been for your downstream business owners working with the data engineering team, working with the product team to say, hey, let's do this in a really short time frame with a combo of Fivetran and Databricks, and let's do it in a way that's giving you huge value?
Yeah, I think for us last year we kicked off, we called it the driver model data mart, but essentially we wanted to re-instrument how we measure the efficacy of our business, right? And as you can imagine, Dropbox, we monitor shares and different engagement metrics with the platform. We essentially were able to do that with Fivetran and re-instrument that data mart within 3 to 4 months. So. Yeah.
Really nice. And I got to ask too, as it relates to the Databricks platform, I mean, there's so much. I know in fact, I had a LinkedIn post this morning and I asked who went to maybe one of the original Spark Summits way back when, Yeah. When I think now to where the Databricks Data Intelligence Platform is, you've got all of these different capabilities and workloads that are there, but you need high quality, trusted, usable data flowing in to facilitate each and every one of those workloads. Anything stand out to you right now in terms of that kind of harmony between Fivetran and Databricks that you're seeing?
I just think it's ease of use, right?
Yep.
And point and click to enable a new connection is really the thing that drives a ton of value for Fivetran. It really does reduce the time to ingest data, and there's trade-offs to that you'll have to manage as a platform, but we wanted to get out of being the bottleneck for getting something into the data warehouse, and so, yeah, that's what I'd say is like the key driver.
Yeah, very, very good. Well, let's transition over here and again, as it relates to overall business outcomes, I mean, we talked about a couple of different areas. I don't know if there's anything that, we talk a lot about transformative activities today, data transformations, business transformations, anything there, especially as it relates to your marketing team and what your team has been able to add that stands out to you.
Yeah, one of the key use cases that I'll call out, there's a bunch. We've enabled a ton of connections and ingestion here. One of the key use cases is return on ad spend. So we were able to ingest Marketo data decorate that. Some of our data engineering teams focused on that decoration, and then generate a data mart that allowed us to lift our ROAS as a marketing team. So, and we're able to tie that back to revenue and time to market, things that Fivetran helped enable.
I had not called on a lot of marketing organizations, probably, 5, 6, 7 years ago. And I remember sitting down, I won't mention the name of the organization, great organization, by the way, healthcare organization, but I sat down with the CMO, Chris, and the CMO said, hey, Kelly, I need you to help me spend more money. And I said, wait, I've never heard this thing before. What kind of a group is this? It's kind of to your point, additional budget. I want to deploy this in the right way without the right data products to do that. It becomes really, really difficult.
Right. Yeah, and then I think what we experience at Dropbox is that, like, as I mentioned in the beginning, the proliferation of marketing tools. Marketo's a big brand that everybody sort of knows, but with all these different AI tools coming, I think we're going to see an acceleration of the amount of integrations that we need to perform to be able to activate the data for the business.
Looking forward to the announcements tomorrow too. I think we've got some good stuff on the horizon.
Right.
Speaking of horizon, what about looking forward? We got a little bit of 2025 left. We've got, who knows what's going. Look at what's happened in 2.5 years with Gen AI, right?
Yep.
What do you have on the horizon for you and your team, and then ultimately what you're being asked to deliver over the next, say, 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and it's going to be internal for us, is really a governance platform on top of all of this data. We just have data from an n number of sources pouring into our data lake. It's growing at a reasonable amount, and we really need to put a coherence management layer on top of that allows the business to activate high quality metrics. So that's kind of the focus over the next few years for Dropbox, is really, how do I know our ROAS number is the source of truth, right? Those are the type of things that we're going to focus on in the next few years, and making sure that each metric that our business depends on is high quality. We've gotten really a lot better at solving the ingestion problem. Now we need to solve, it's in the data lake, how do we make sure it's high quality? How do we make sure it's governed? How do we make sure it's compliant? When you unlock a lot of the integrations with Fivetran, how do you know someone's not ingesting something that could be HIPAA relevant or things like that for compliance? We're going to need to introduce governance that allows us to monitor that in a coherent way. Really good.
Any particular approaches or thoughts around how you might want to try to tackle that you can share? Or?
We're in the early phases of that sort of thing. I think for us, we're a code first company, so we're going to codify a lot of our key metrics and then create interfaces for the business to be able to search and discover our metrics. And what we've experienced with Fivetran is, someone can load a G sheet into your data lake, and then a really important metric can now be driven by this really not engineering CI/CD process, right? And so what we want to build is something that can discover those sort of things and introduce engineering quality on top of it, right? And so we're exploring some of the tools that you'll see here to do those sort of things, but more to come on that.
So I've got one of my sons is a data engineer. He's always talking to me about automation and ensuring that, and it's a really lean team. I'm hearing that same thing from you, like if we can automate it, we will automate it as a data team.
Yeah, I think, resource constraints and the ability to operate at scale with a smaller team, I think is something that allows us to innovate, but it's been the thing that's allowed us to introduce third-party tools. Right, we've gotten to the point, and big data has gotten to the point where the amount of third-party tools that are actually effective at scale has actually reached a point where they can solve the problem that Dropbox had. 10 to 12 years ago, all of Dropbox's technology to solve these problems was internally built. Home-built code, home-built orchestration systems, all of these sort of things, and we're sort of going through this genesis where now that the tooling in the market is catching up, we're adopting a lot of those things and implementing it at scale.
And the driver for that of making this conversion over is y'all have been going through it over the last couple of years. Main dimensions being the time aspect, the cost aspect, simplicity. What stood out to you?
I think time to market,
Yep.
which we've referenced in this presentation multiple times, and then I think it's just the quality of the tools to be able to handle scale, right?
Okay.
Like when you're ingesting and operating on petabytes of data, lots of queries per second, a lot of the tools back in the early days couldn't handle Dropbox scale, so we had to do it ourselves, right? And so now a lot of these vendors are catching up to be able to solve our level of big data problem.
Cool. Anything else that you wanted to share? I guess we have a little bit of time, just a couple of minutes for questions, but anything you didn't talk about that you'd like to share with the group?
No, I don't think there's anything that jumps to mind. I think bringing data together is one of the core problems of the industry, and so I think Fivetran is in a really nice position to assist with that. I think Dropbox also sees differentiation for different vendors in implementing our own integrations, right? And so we balance those things depending on how we feel about the value of the data set as it relates to our products and those sort of things. Fivetran really unlocks those situations where we have time to market is imperative. There's a business team that needs something, and we allow them to self-serve to unlock themselves, right? And then we make sure that we govern it after the fact.
Self-service is elusive too. That's a tough one. I've been asked about many years, and I think we are getting really close. We do have a couple of minutes for Q&A.